Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff.
Live from the basement of the YouTube headquarters, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and is the key to a happy retirement, eating dinner at 4:30, and a great tax strategy? Duh. Today, we nerd out on taxes with the guy who's chief money nerd at our brother podcast, Earn and Invest, Doc G. And joining him from the Beyond Budgets podcast, does tax savings go in the budget? We'll ask her, CFP Deb Meyer. And also the guy behind the Fi Tax Guy YouTube channel, Sean Mullaney. But of course, today we won't just tax you with tax talk. At the halfway mark of today's show, we'll see how our contributors do answering my incredible trivia question. And now, a guy who says he couldn't have ruined his wife's birthday celebration because he didn't even know it was her birthday, it's Joe Saul-Sehy.
That's right, Doug. How can you ruin it if you had no idea?
Like you were never there.
Welcome to We Have No Clue How This Whole Thing Works podcast. I am Joe Saul-Sehy, and happy Friday to all of you. We are ready to have a robust conversation. What do you do to celebrate Friday? You talk tax planning. That's what we do, Doug. We know how to light this weekend candle. It's like happy hour for money nerds.
Settle down, party people.
Yes, it's going to be great. Let's meet this band of characters. Well, we're going to flex the fact that we know some people that know what they're talking about when it comes to financial planning and taxes. Let's start off with the gentleman behind our brother podcast, Earn and Invest. Doc G's here. How are you, man?
I'm good. It's like, let's start with the one who doesn't know about tax planning. Doug was like, it's Deb Meyer, CFP, and Sean Mullaney, and
that other guy.
Doc G from Earn and Invest. No letters behind his name.
We got to have one person, though, who's the everyman. You filed taxes before.
I have, and I have a mother who is a CPA who's always made my life so easy. So I am the case study here of someone who doesn't understand things.
Well, we're going to find out if Doc G maybe needs to know more to get where he's going.
I understand a little.
Yes, and let's talk next to the woman from the Behind Budgets podcast. I was just thinking, I'm listening to her latest show, and I realized I don't think she's been on since like 2017. Deb Meyer's back. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Joe.
I remember you and I sitting at a restaurant in Orlando, planning your first visit. And that feels like it was like 4 days ago. Deb, where'd the time go?
I don't know. At that time, I think I was living in Missouri. Then I moved to Florida. Now I'm back in Missouri. So all this craziness moving.
You had to get out before the hurricanes.
Yeah. It's a scary situation for those down there. I know this is going live next week, but yeah.
Yeah, we're recording this before the second hurricane. So we're thinking about all of our friends in Florida right now. But Deb, for the 4 people that don't know about the Beyond Budgets podcast out there's got to be one. Tell everybody what you do.
Yeah, I started Beyond Budgets in November of last year. And it's really just to help parents get a solid foundation that's beyond just basic budgeting. So as the name implies, we go into concepts around tax planning, saving for college. It's really just designed for parents that are raising kids. They're in that life stage where they need a little bit of extra education, and I want to help give it to them.
The last episode I was just listening to, you were talking about better diversification as an example.
Mm-hmm. I talk about investing strategies. We have a mix of individual episodes that I'm just talking on some kind of financial planning topic or investing topic. And then we also have some interviews with really cool guests.
Well, are you ready to get your tax nerd hat on, Deb?
I am. I'm stoked.
Well, let's talk to our friend who we think of as a tax nerd. He's also a CFP. Sean Mullaney is here. How are you, brother?
Joe, it's great to be here. It's funny. Today's sort of, we got the hurricane in Florida. I'm a Mets fan and a Jets fan. We just fired our head coach. We got a big playoff game in Flushing. And there's all these letters out there in the world, CFP, CPA. Jordan, you're an MD, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes people get that confused about me. I'm actually a CPA. I'm not
You're CPA, not CFP.
I'm a CPA, not a CFP. But it's so confusing. I am a financial planner. I work in that realm. But you know what? It's all about developing your own thoughts, right? It's great that so-and-so has such and such credentials behind their name, but it's all about what we're going to talk about today. It's developing your own opinion. Different people can look at different issues in a reasonable manner and come to different conclusions. I'm looking forward to this one because this one's got all sorts of balls in the air on it.
It totally does. What's funny, Sean, is that Doug always tells me that I forget to put his letters behind his name, which is BMOC. He's got BMOC. Remember those letters? Anybody?
I remember that. Yeah. I can tell you what that is. If that's going to be the trivia question, then I'm in really good shape.
It might be a little more difficult than that. Doug, we got to start putting the letters behind your name.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've got all kinds of letters.
Or maybe it should be BMOP.
Big Man on Podcast.
Podcast.
I'm done with that.
Big Man on Podcast. Woo-hoo.
Wow, I'm the slow guy in this show. I didn't even see that coming when it hit me like a truck. Sean, we asked Deb about the Beyond Budgets podcast. How about the Fi Tax Guy YouTube channel? What you got going on there?
Yeah, so I got my YouTube channel. I'm putting up videos every Saturday morning, and that's going to be largely tax focused, but not exclusively. I've got some ideas for some different personal finance topics. And then my Fi Tax Guy blog, FiTaxGuy.com, it's the intersection of tax and financial independence. So it focuses a lot on retirement accounts, a lot about how tax planning and financial independence planning intersect.
You know what's great, Jordan, is that we've got experts, Deb and Sean, with us. You know what's nearly as good as that?
Tell me, Joe, tell me.
The fact that this episode's brought to you by State Farm. How about that? Isn't that wonderful?
Exciting.
If you own a small business, whatever your business might be, you need someone who understands, and that's where State Farm Small Business Insurance comes in. State Farm agents, they're small business owners too, and they know what it takes. They can help you choose personalized policies that fit your budget. Small business insurance from State Farm. Everybody sing it. Like a good neighbor. Come on. State Farm.
State Farm.
See, we're great. Talk to your local agent today. And State Farm just locked us out like your head coach got locked out of the Jets facility today, Sean. We've got Deb Meyer here, Sean Mullaney, Doc G, neighbor Doug, the BMOP on this podcast. Before we get today's action going, though, we do have a couple other sponsors that make sure this is free for everybody. Let's hear from them, and we'll get this party started. In business, there is no room for guesswork. Every shipment matters. Every deadline counts. And when you're trying to keep operations running smoothly, the last thing you need is uncertainty. That's why reliability is at the core of USPS Ground Advantage. From the moment your package is first scanned in, it moves through a secure nationwide network, aiding in a timely and accurate delivery. You get near real-time tracking so you can keep up with your shipments. And with affordable upfront pricing, there are no hidden fees or surprise surcharges to throw off your cost sheets. It all adds up to predictable deliveries you can depend on, because knowing your logistics are handled lets you focus on everything else, your customers, your team, and the future you're building. Visit USPS.com/Ground Advantage to start shipping with confidence. USPS Ground Advantage. We mean business. Dell PCs with Intel Inside are built for the moments you plan and the ones you don't. They're for those all-night study sessions, the moment you're working from a cafe and realize every outlet's taken, the times you're deep in your flow and can't be interrupted by an auto update. That's why Dell builds tech that adapts to you. Built with long-lasting batteries so you're not scrambling for an outlet, and built-in intelligence that makes updates around your schedule, not in the middle of it. Find technology built for the way you work at Dell.com/Dell PCs. Built for you. The inspiration for today's discussion comes to us from the Oblivious Investor blog. Mike Piper, longtime guy in the FIRE community, in the personal finance community, is the author of that blog, and he likes to nerd out on taxes, and we're going to join him today because his piece is called Effective versus Marginal Tax Rate in Retirement. That's what got me excited, Doc. When I read that, I was like, oh, this is going to be a great day. Mike's writing about effective versus marginal tax rates, #dream. His subtitle is Why Taxes Don't Usually Cause People to Go Broke. And that got me thinking. I'm like, wait a minute, tax strategies, those are super important when it comes to your financial plan. So Deb, I want to start with you. When you're sitting down with somebody and you're looking at their financial plan, you're helping them build their financial plan for themselves, where does tax planning really fit in?
I think it's a really important piece. Like Sean, I actually have a background as a CPA as well, so I have the tax geek element going here. But it's crucial to understand what your current tax bracket is, but it's also really important to try to kind of project out what that's going to look like down the road. So any client conversation I'm having, especially when we're trying to make decisions around Roth contributions or conversions, taxes are a huge piece of that. And it really does make a difference in not only the current financial plan, but that future financial plan as well.
Sean, where do you think it fits?
It's sort of everywhere because, you think about the three topics that folks get all worked up about: investments, retirement, and taxes, right? Those are the three financial planning topics that everybody's all excited about. Well, taxes is embedded in all three, even though one of them is taxes itself. So I'll just give you one example. There aren't going to be many in the audience. Now, there might be some self-employed folks, some artists, NFL quarterbacks, but most of the folks in the audience are probably going to need to capture the employer match in their 401k, at least that, in order to get to a place where retirement is a realistic possibility. Well, that's tax planning, it's retirement planning, and it's investment planning all wrapped up in one. It's sort of odd how the financial planning industry sort of evolved around beta and investments. And it's like, okay, that's great, but taxes isn't everything. And I think there's so much great play in the joints for those of us in the audience who are still working and thinking about, well, wait a minute, how can I afford my retirement? And tax planning is going to be, I think, one of the top things in that inquiry.
All right, Doc, balance out the tax nerds here, because I heard a lot of tax nerdery there between Deb and Sean. Mike says people don't usually go broke because they don't understand taxes. Do you feel like tax planning's been a big part of you getting where you want to go?
I think it has, but I also think we overestimate the stakes. And so people who don't understand taxes feel exactly like that. I'm going to do something wrong and I'm going to be torpedoed. And if I put it in the Roth, God forbid, instead of the 401k, or I put it in the 401k and God forbid, instead of the Roth, it's going to cause all sorts of problems. And what I think I've found is that we historically tend, at least at this point in time, to pay lower taxes than we could. And that if you figure out how to be good as opposed to be the best and get the right help, I don't think taxes are going to hinder you. Yes, they're going to be something you deal with all the time. And because they are a reality and we have to pay them, we're always going to be trying to optimize. But with the right help and being really thoughtful about it, it shouldn't really stop you.
Deb, Mike says that he doesn't see people go broke because they don't understand taxes. Do you see? Oh, look at you!
Yeah,
you're like,
I disagree respectfully. Especially for like small business owners or self-employed people, taxes are such a critical piece to plan for during those working years. Now, in the article, it focused more on retirees, and I think but even in that, there are some really smart tax strategies that you can employ. And if you don't have the knowledge or you're not working with an advisor to understand the repercussions, it can be really detrimental to having that big nest egg that you're depending on in the later years in life.
It's funny though, Deb, so many people don't know. I've been a financial planner for a long time, but when I was a financial planner, so many people don't know what Mike talks about right here in the header. They don't understand the difference between effective and marginal tax rates. I can't tell you, and maybe, I don't know if this still happens or not, Deb, tell me if it does. But I just remember back in the day, like a married couple would come in and meet with me and they go, well, only one of us works because we did the math. And if the second person works, we'll have less money because it's going to throw us in the next tax bracket. And I go, good news. That's not how tax brackets work. You get to go to work, which, by the way, it turns out they didn't want to do in the first place. Right? It turns out that it was all a big smokescreen. But how often have you heard that people think that more money's going toward taxes than it really is?
I've heard it. I have a personal example, but I don't want to name names, but my sister. She's like, well, my husband, he does well as a doctor. And I don't know that it's going to make that much of a difference because of tax. And I'm like, you can still earn money. Yes, you're going to pay taxes, but you're still earning money.
And you haven't gotten a holiday gift from her since, have you?
She had young kids and the cost of daycare and all of that. You have to justify, okay, but purely on a tax perspective, there's no 100% tax rate, right?
Well, and Sean, I know you enough to know, let's keep on that entrepreneur theme that Deb just managed. If somebody's an entrepreneur, I think you would agree taxes can make a big difference for those people very much.
Well, and I think we have to step back and say life cycle matters so much here. I have a little saying that the tax code wants you to be early retired and married, right? And Deb made a great point. So think about a self-employed person, right? They're paying income tax and they might, hey, do I do a traditional 401k, a Roth 401k? Well, they have to make a decision at a marginal tax bracket. But not only are they paying income tax, they're also paying payroll tax and they're paying both halves, right? You go to work, you have a W-2 job, 6.2% goes out from your salary for Social Security, another 1.45% goes out for Medicare. When you're self-employed, you got both of those halves to deal with. So that's your working years, your entrepreneurial years. Get to early retirement. And assuming you're not taking Social Security, FICA just went from an outflow to a no flow. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then whatever age you determine to turn on Social Security, you've gone from outflow to no flow to inflow. I think a lot of this you have to step back. And what Mike's doing in the article, I think very well, is saying, well, at 65, what does this look like? Right. Because a lot of the people in the audience are trying to be retired by 65. So that's a great place to stop and say, well, what does this look like? And I think it shows that when we're retirees, the tax code tends to favor us. Mike doesn't make the point about the FICA taxes, but he does make the point about the progressive tax rates, right? Where you're taking that money that you deferred all those years back into income, you're going up the progressive tax brackets and the high standard deduction. When we're at work and we're trying to make a decision, it's basically a marginal tax rate issue because we just have the income. The income's the income. We get a bonus on New Year's Eve. We get a bonus. We're taxed. There's nothing we can do about that, but we can make some marginal decisions on, say, a traditional 401k versus a Roth 401k. That's why when we're working, the marginal rate matters so much more. And as Mike is pointing out in the article, the effective rate matters so much more for lived experience when we're 65 and retired.
Well, is that an issue for you, Doc, that during working years, to Sean's point, you're looking at taxes one way, then, quoting Stephen Covey, you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other end with it, right? The other end looks, according to Sean, a lot different because now you're worried about what your effective tax rate is. Are you worried about that?
I was very worried about it until I started using tax calculators. So just like your average person who's ignorant of this stuff, I had my accountant who was my mother and she was doing everything for me. So I didn't pay a huge amount of attention to it. And then I started looking at my personal situation. For instance, I am very much in the tax deferred space. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking, oh my gosh, at some point I'm going to be paying this huge amount of taxes.
Yeah, but when like you go a huge tax bomb down the road for you?
It is on some level. But when you do go and you start looking at the tax calculators, et cetera, most of us, again, because we don't know the difference between marginal and effective tax rate, just pick the highest tax rate and assume we're going to be paying forever at the highest tax rate. And the truth of the matter is the effective tax rate actually is a lot less than that, even for people who do have a tax bomb. And so I think we sometimes lose track and we try to be as efficient as possible. And a lot of times we don't realize you're going to be paying the taxes. You might be paying them early. You might be paying them later. Things might happen in the tax code that can change. And so there's a lot of pieces that we actually have very little control over. So we can do our best guesstimated tax plan right now and hope that we're right. we can do that. But the truth of the matter is, I think if we kind of do some really good moves and get the right professionals involved, again, the likelihood it's going to blow up in our face, especially at that retirement period. So I'm not talking about the small business period and when we're actively building, but I'm talking about when you get to retirement, which is what I think a lot of people worry about. The likelihood it's going to really blow up in your face is small.
This is maybe a different show, Doc, but the fact that your mom is your tax professional, do you think that in some ways that might hurt you because it's a family member, you just assume that she's taking care of you, and so you end up knowing less about it because you think she's got it handled?
For sure. Oh, for sure. And I grew up as a physician, so I thought I could offload all my financial decisions to a financial advisor. And of course, then as I learned about finances and started a podcast and really did the deep dive, I realized that I had offloaded all this important stuff to someone else that I should have known about myself. And I think I did a lot of that with the taxes too. I think, my biggest problem is my mom's exceedingly conservative as an accountant. So I probably pay more taxes than anyone.
Hold on a second. Were you Doogie Howser? You just told us you grew up as a physician.
Right?
Yes.
Were
yes.
you in med school when you were like 11?
It was about 13. No.
It's a physician out of the
Let
womb.
me amend that. I grew up thinking that I was going to be a physician and didn't really worry about money or investments or those kind of things. I really had my head down and was worried about taking care of people and learning the art of being a doctor. So I kind of offloaded as much of that stuff as I could. And just like anything else, it's important to really educate yourself. Even if you're using a financial advisor, you're using a good CPA, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't also understand, because ultimately you have to help drive that ship. And a lot of times, even now, I'm realizing, boy, I could have known better questions to ask my CPA. And I think that's really important as you're doing that planning so you don't get afraid for the future.
Let's go there before the break. Deb, I love what Doc G's saying about you hire this professional help, not just to delegate some of the tough stuff, but to make you smarter, right? So that you're better at this. What are some of the basics that the pros around you should be teaching you about taxes that you don't see enough people know?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, they assume they can just delegate and give that responsibility over to the advisor, but it's really about empowering you to understand. Like when I'm working with a small business client on their financials, it's not just about me understanding their financials, it's about them understanding their financials.
Right.
So just getting in the shoes of, okay, yes, I'm hiring this professional to better understand, but it's still on me. I'm still stewarding that business. I'm still owning that. And I need to be informed about what that looks like. So I was just having a conversation earlier with one of my clients, and he started another business. So they had a primary business. Now they have a secondary business. And he's like, okay, do I have to make 2 different estimated tax payments? And I said, no, luckily it's just one estimated tax payment as your individual. And luckily we'll figure that all into your tax projection, things like that. But
save the price of one stamp.
Right. Luckily he doesn't have to do 2 different federal payments. Again, using that education to understand your situation. And, some things can happen to advisors on a moment's notice, and you don't want to be left in a lurch if you don't understand the underlying details, especially when it comes to taxes.
Yeah, I remember when I was an advisor, I would tell my clients that you hire me not to do it all for you, because if I get hit by the bus and you're in the same spot you were in before me, I haven't really done my job. My job's to make you smarter. Do you think, Deb, one of the basics things people should know, because I'm trying to think about what are these basic things that we all should know? Maybe Roth versus pre-tax when it comes to our retirement plan. Sean mentioned retirement plans earlier. Deb, you think that's a basic one we should know?
Yeah, I think understanding the difference between the two. So Roth IRA or 401k, that's already after tax money, and it can grow. You don't have to take it out at a certain point. With an IRA or a pre-tax 401k, once you turn that required distribution age, which is like 72 and up here on out, depending on what birth year you are,
right,
that's all going to be impacted, where you might have a bigger tax problem if you have the vehicles in a IRA or a pre-tax 401k, because you really do have to pay attention to your taxes as you're withdrawing in those retirement years and the required distributions kick in.
And then I guess, Sean, speaking of that, let's pick up where Deb left off. She's talking about this requirement distribution. It seems to me that that's a basic thing everybody should know as well.
Yeah, I got a couple for you. So one is that, yes, there is a end of the line, right? So you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, you're putting money into that traditional 401k, essentially tax deferring it. You're saying, look, this is $23,000 going into the 401k. Don't tax me now. That's the equivalent of getting a tax deduction. That's great. But the IRS says, all right, or the Congress says, the party won't last forever. So in your 70s, eventually you have to start taking money out. It's based on an actuarial table. It actually starts relatively modestly. The first RMDs, depending on your age, are in the high threes or low four in terms of a percentage. The other thing I think people should understand is basis recovery. Some people out there are worried about early retirement. They're like, oh, I've built up these taxable brokerage accounts, which actually aren't that bad, right? It's not in a 401k or an IRA, so it doesn't have some of the tax advantages. But it turns out they're not that bad. And one of the reasons is something called basis recovery. And what the heck is that? Well, Joe, say you bought Microsoft today, and I'm not giving investment advice to anyone, and I'm not telling you, I don't even know what Microsoft's stock price is. But say you buy it today for 100, and then tomorrow you sell it for 100. The people hopefully in the five in the squares here know that you have no tax on that. Well, why is that? It's called basis. You have this recovery of what you invested in it. Well, early retirees get to early retirement and they have years of mutual funds. And so maybe they have 500,000 sitting in a brokerage account and they say, well, I'm going to spend 100,000 my first year of retirement. Well, now I'm going to be taxed on 100,000, right? No. You have basis in those mutual funds, and depends on the mutual fund, how it did. Maybe for 100,000 you sell, you have 40,000 of basis, you recover 50,000, 60,000 of basis. So you have to understand, okay, wait a minute. If I sell 100,000 of this to live, how much of that is actually going to be taxable income? And I think some people get to early retirement or thinking about early retirement and are forgetting to consider that tax basis thing.
Yeah, and I think what's also important to know, and I think we do a lousy job of teaching this. A lot of times when you make, for instance, the Roth versus traditional decision, or even what to put in a taxable brokerage, you're really making that conclusion based on a bunch of estimates that you have no idea if they're going to come true or not. And so the truth of the matter is what we should really be teaching is diversification. And that's the thing that no one taught me at the beginning. What we want is tax status diversification because we have no idea what tax bracket we're going to be in when we're retired. We have no idea what the laws are going to be when we're retired. I mean, there are a lot of things that are going to happen that we have no control over. And I think we as professionals do a really bad job at teaching people that diversification so that you don't get hit too high or too low at all. You don't either pay too much taxes now or pay too much taxes later. You kind of even out the road.
I think we feed into that too often. Deb, listening to one of your latest episodes of the Beyond Budgets podcast, you were talking about this. Too often you see the financial media looks into the crystal ball and we don't know where taxes are going to be in the future. And a lot of times people are using these calculators, projecting where they're going to be. And frankly, I don't think we have any clue.
No. It's hard. I mean, you can take guesses based on what current tax law is, but it's hard to go 20, 30, 40 years out. It's hard to even go 5 years out. Like we know the Tax Cuts and Job Act, it's going to start expiring next year, but depending on who comes into office and what Congress decides to do, and that will really impact whether the Tax Cut and Job Act provisions are extended or if they're just completely cut off. And we start back like we were pre-tax cuts.
And then the administration after that, the administration after that, the
Right.
administration after that. Yeah, Sean?
Joe, one thing I do look at is congressional motivation and congressional history in this regard, right? So
did you say congressional and motivation in the same sentence? I'm sorry. I just thought I heard that.
So think about this. And I don't even know what the federal debt is. If that's a trivia question, I'm in trouble. But it's something like $35 trillion of debt, right? That's a bad thing. That is not a good thing, at least in my opinion, not to get too political. But then people say, well, wait a minute. So retirees are going to have all these additional taxes because of this huge federal debt. And I don't think that conclusion follows from the premise. I think there's plenty of other deep pockets that Congress could go after for that $35 trillion of federal debt. Don't quote me on the exact number. But then you say, well, wait a minute, what has Congress done in the recent past? And if you look at the TCJA in 2017, you look at the delaying of RMDs twice, the CARES Act canceled RMDs for a year. What you see from 2017 to 2022 is these constant small tax cuts for retirees, even though a lot of commentators are out there saying, wait a minute, they're going to be all these tax increases. So I tend to be more optimistic about the future. Now, I fully say that is not a risk-free proposition. And so going back to something Jordan was saying about diversification, one wrinkle of that, I like to call it optimizing for known trade-offs, right? So like, for example, people worry about a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k. Which one should I do? I think for many, I tend to like the Roth IRA over the Roth 401k. The big reason there is if you do a Roth 401k, that's a dollar you can't deduct into a traditional 401k. For many in the audience, the way the rules work, it's arcane. many can do a Roth IRA at home, but can't deduct a traditional IRA contribution. So why not do the Roth IRA at home and take a deduction for the traditional 401k at work? There you're optimizing for a known trade-off. So yeah, there's a lot of speculation here. I'm not as worried as some of the other commentators are in terms of retirees. Retirees have a vote and they show up on election day, but we'll see. You got to do your own analysis on that.
I don't think it's a political statement to say the U.S. has too much debt. I think it's probably universal. I mean, there might be somebody out there going, no, I think we deserve more debt. We need more.
I don't like that you put a bad connotation on it, Joe. I'm a big fan of debt, and I don't like the negative like syrup you're pouring over the top.
Yeah, right. Speaking of negative connotations, I'm going to put a negative connotation on the fact that we are late for the biggest part of every Friday episode, which is our trivia challenge between our 3 frequent contributors, none of which are here today. Mom, who's not usually here. Jesse Kramer's played for her a lot lately. Sean Mullaney, you'll play on behalf of Mom. Doc G, you are horrible at this, so we will have you play on behalf of OG, because that makes sense, Doug, right? We got to keep this competition close.
Logic.
And Deb, just to keep genders the same, will have you play on behalf of Paula Pant from Afford Anything, which means, Deb, playing on behalf of Paula brings up some good news and some bad news. You want the good news or the bad news?
I'll take the good news.
Well, the good news is you get to guess last, which is a position of power. Now, The bad news is that's because you're in last place. But Paula's had this advantage forever, and Doug doesn't seem to be able to make anything of it. But Paula/Deb have 8 points. Mom/Sean has 11. OG/Doc G has 15. So can Deb help Team Paula get closer to Mom for second? Can Sean help Mom maybe make this a race for the win? Well, we need a trivia question to find out. Doug, what are we talking about this fine Friday?
Well, hey there, stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and you can't talk taxes without thinking about the guy with the ultimate tax strategy, Al Capone. Capone, yeah, you heard me right.
That's
Capone
perfect.
paid 0 in taxes. Guy was a genius. He paid 0 in taxes because he just plain didn't file. Who'd have thunk it? That worked well until he was finally arrested in 1929 on 22 counts of tax evasion.
You wouldn't have seen that going sideways, Doug. How does not filing go sideways?
Sometimes life just comes up and smacks you.
Strange.
On today's date, back in 1931, he finally went to prison. The government, they had to string together all of Capone's illegal operations to assert how much he owed. They looked at all his businesses, and bootlegging and drugs and prostitution, gambling, and hey, little known facts, some bonus trivia for you, burner cell phones. Dude cornered the market on those. So here's today's question. When the government finished estimating the income from all of those businesses, they decided he made how much money back in 1931 from all of those in total. Don't forget about the cell phones. I'll be back right after I finish this hand of spades with Joe's mom, Gertrude, and her friend Ruth. I got $5 on this hand, and if I win, I'm afraid I'm going to have to file tax return this year. I don't want to go to jail.
You definitely want to make sure you file if you win that $5, Doug. But who's going to get this? I don't know. $5, no money, but all the glory. Doc, you get to go first. Al Capone, how much money did the government say Al Capone never paid tax on back in 1931?
I was going to say I'm happy to double down here, and you guys would think that's because I'm being optimistic, and no, I just want to cost OG as many points as possible. like if I win, you give me 1, but if I lose, you take away 2.
About throwing him under the bus. You said the silent part out loud.
I know. I have no idea. I'm going to guess. So this is in today's dollars?
No,
or
this is in
In
$1931.
$1931. I'm going to say $1,100,001.
$1,100,001.
I like my ones.
Yeah. Sean, what do you want to do with that? $1 million? Do you think that's high? You think that's low?
I think that's low because the first thing that sort of came to my head is Al Capone, right? So he's sort of on the top of the funnel, right? Or the pyramid of the mob. And I know it's inflated dollars, but I feel like it's got to be an 8-figure number, probably a low 8-figure number. But this is just sort of my.
You think he's way low?
Yeah, so I'd say Jordan's a little low. I will say $11 million.
$11 million. So we got 1.1, and then we got a factor of 10, Deb. 11.
Oh my goodness. I was thinking below $1 million. So I was like, oh, okay, what was a big salary back in the 1920s and 30s? And it was probably like $5,000 a year, right? Like $10,000. So I was going to go like $667,328.
And you're still going to do that.
You know I have to do the math on all this stuff, right? What the hell?
We all had a conversation about this, Doug, before the show.
I thought an exact number would be helping me win or helping Paula win.
663,000.
No.
667,000.
328. I wrote it down.
328. To round, right? She would have said 27.95, but decided to round it to 328. All right, we got 67,328. 11 million for Sean, and Doc's got 1.1 million and $1. Who's going to be right? We'll find out in just a second. We'll be right back.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
Did you know Fast Growing Trees is America's largest and most trusted online nursery with thousands of trees and plants and over 2 million happy customers? Whether you're planting fruit trees, adding privacy, brightening things up with flowers, or bringing in houseplants, Fast Growing Trees has it all. Even better, they can help you find options that are right for your climate, your space, and lifestyle. Click Order Grow. Every plant arrives healthy with the Alive and Thrive guarantee straight to your door. So if you're ready to get planting, this is the moment. Right now, they have great deals on spring planting essentials, up to half off on select plants. And listeners to our show get 20% off their first purchase when using the code WWO at checkout. That's an additional 20% off. Better plants and better growing at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code WWO at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code WWO. Now's the perfect time to plant. Let's grow together. Use WWO to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Go to growingfasttrees.com for details.
Well, our voting is usually all over the place, but when it comes to Al Capone and his money, you guys are definitely all over the place. Doc, you're at 1.1 million and $1, which is
I'm feeling good. You know why?
Why?
Because I will not be in last place. Someone's going to be worse than me.
You're right in the middle. Sean,
someone's going to be worse than me.
Deb and Doc think apparently your number is off by over a factor of 10. What are you thinking?
I don't know. I would not bet money on this proposition because you got inflation. And it's like, how much of the activities do they get like him on versus other? I don't know.
Spoken like a CPA.
Which is, Deb, I think exactly what you're thinking. Lots of inflation. Yeah. So 667,000 back in 31 is a lot of money.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. We need a winner. Doug, who's it going to be?
Well, hey there, stackers. I'm Notable Card Shark and the guy who's the most honest guy ever on his taxes. Nobody honester than me for all the IRS agents listening. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. While it's fun playing cards with Joe's mom, I swear I can't win with that woman. Make sure she's on your team because she and Ruth just schooled me and Gertrude. Joe's mom says I shouldn't be so angry about it. She says I've got some kind of preoccupation with vengeance. Yeah, well, we'll see about that, old lady. Won't we? We will see about that. Well, for today's question, which I would have totally won had I been a contestant and not at all because I've already seen the answer. On today's date in 1931, noted gangster Al Capone went to prison for 22 counts of tax evasion. The government asserted he made how much money which had never been taxed? Well, let's replay it for you. I will tell you that Doc G was off by just $83,899,999. Deb/Paula, well, she was off by $84,332.
That's 84 million.
84 million.
$84,332,672, making Sean/Mom off by just $74 million because the real answer is $85 million Capone raked in from burner cell phones.
Yeah, burner cell phones.
Congratulations,
big part
Sean.
of 1931 of the game. He had the technical advantage, Doug. Had the tech advantage.
Yeah.
Deb, I want to go back to your answer because what'd you say, Doug? $85 million in 1931, Deb.
In 1931 is a lot of money.
That's insane.
I know you were playing the time value money game and it still was 85 million.
Off.
That guy made a ton of money. That was amazing.
I wonder if he had, I don't technically know his activities and how many people he had working under him, but I've got to imagine like an enormous fleet.
Well,
to make that much money.
Yeah.
What I heard happen was he went around the neighborhoods of Chicago and he said, if I get one person and you get two people and then that person gets three people, everybody will make a bunch of money and you don't have to work. Isn't that the way it worked, Doug?
So, totally. And that one little wormy guy that was his accountant, we all saw Untouchables, right? The guy with the glasses, he was the accountant. He was accounting for the equivalent of $1.7 billion in today's money.
$1.7 billion. Nice job, Mr. Mullaney, bringing Mom up closer to OG.
It's an honor to have won. Big feather in the cap today.
Wow.
And Doc, thanks for throwing the game. We appreciate it. Nice work.
I anchored everybody. I anchored them low. I did it for you, Joe. I did it for you.
Low. Holy cow. Let's go to the second half of this discussion. And I want to start off by talking about the Uber nerds out there and the things that we maybe worry too much about, because financial podcasts, of course, are people that love this topic. And let's maybe calm people down a little bit. Sean, let's start with you this time. Taxes on investments. It seems like when I see Uber nerds, they're so obsessed with sheltering. And yet I think Doc G nailed it. We should really be concerned about flexibility. I mean, I see so many nerds that end up with, oh boy, all my money's optimized and now I can't get any of it. Do you think tax on investments is maybe something our biggest money fans pay too much attention to?
Well, and Mike Piper in this article that you shared with us, Joe, makes this great point about the tax torpedo. So this is one of those money nerd things where, oh no, I make more income, maybe on investments, maybe because of tax deferred retirement accounts, whatever it is. And so that income makes more of my Social Security subject to tax. And they call that the tax torpedo. And it's got this big, scary name, the tax torpedo. But it turns out it doesn't have much to do with anybody's lived experience. They still tend to have a very low effective tax rate in retirement. And I think sometimes it gets to the worst outcome of all the outcomes in personal finance, which is not having something to worry about. If we don't have something to worry about, then we're in big trouble, right? So some people just need something to worry about. So if somebody can go grab the tax torpedo off the shelf, oh, thank goodness, right? We got something to worry about again. Or somebody can go grab Irma off the shelf. Oh, thank goodness, we got something to worry about. So, one of the things I tell people is if in doubt, just save. Investments tend to be relatively lightly taxed in the United States from an income tax perspective. If you're in doubt, start saving and then figure it out later in terms of, oh, does it go in a 401k or a Roth IRA or a brokerage? They talk about the biggest determinant of success is contribution rate. And I think that's true both from an investment perspective and a tax perspective.
It's so huge. I totally agree. A lot of people with not much money worried about taxes when they should be worried about contributing more money, especially, Deb, when they start out. And the thing that really frustrates me, I hear these commercials all the time from robo-advisors. And robo-advisors target in my opinion, the wrong people. They target these very young people who need a robo-advisor, much like camels need snow tires. Why you need a robo-advisor when you're 23 years old is beyond me. Yes, Doug, I said it out loud. I said it out loud.
That's a thing that came out of your brain. You realize that, right?
The point is they don't need it. And I just think a robo is ridiculous for a 24-year-old investor. But the thing, Deb, that they talk about, which is even more ridiculous, tax loss harvesting.
Tax loss harvesting.
Yeah.
I've got a 24-year-old who's managed to save $500. They put it into a robo, and they do it because they offer tax loss harvesting.
Right.
Do we worry too much about tax loss harvesting in investing?
Yes, especially in the scenario you're painting with younger investors. And even just when you think about the contributions and going like pre-tax on your 401k contribution, if you're starting off in your career and you're making $35,000 in your starting job and your earnings potential is much higher, then when you're actually earning those extra dollars, yes, you need to be more concerned about taxes and what type of vehicle to put it in. But when you're just getting started, it's really about cash flow management. It's about understanding you need to save. Take in your income and don't have the expenses exceed that income. That's the basic. And yes, contribute enough to a retirement plan if you have a traditional employer that's doing a match. Yes, that's an important piece. But outside of that, just get into that habit of living kind of frugally, living within your means.
Doc, I want to turn to you for another thing. You know, we see so many of our tax nerds who really love the idea of the HSA. But what they love about it is not the fact that it's a high deductible plan, that it's less expensive, that I put this money in an account. It's the fact that I can invest that money. I've come to you specifically as a medical professional because there's a big piece of me that thinks that a lot of our Uber nerds, they're not going to go to the doctor because I need that money to multiply for later, right? I'll just go ahead and walk it off and everything will be fine. Do you think that's really happening?
I don't know if that's happening. I like HSAs. I think they do something that, for instance, tax loss harvesting doesn't. So a lot of, again, us non-CPAs hear tax loss harvesting and think it's the greatest thing in the world and have no idea that it actually changes your basis. And therefore, you one day will pay taxes. Yes, it puts those taxes off. Yes, there's some benefits. I think the same thing with the 1031 exchange. If you die with that property, great. But if you don't die with that property and you eventually sell it, your basis has been changed, which means you're going to pay more taxes eventually. Here's what I like about HSAs. It's the one place where you're actually winning the game, right? So you put it in tax-free, it grows tax-free. And then as long as you use it on medical stuff, you can spend it tax-free. There are very few vehicles that allow you to do that. Yes, I guess that could keep someone from going to the doctor, but you can always pay with your normal cash out of your checking account and let it grow and let it grow. And then once you get Medicare age or start having all those problems and hospitalizations that older people have, you can start using it then. There will be plenty of medical costs in the future, even if you pay out of pocket for some of those now.
Yeah, my problem isn't liking the HSA. I think sometimes money nerds like it so much that we're like, okay, I'm going to make sure I don't use any of this money.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this is also getting to that whole idea that I'm surprised we haven't said it yet in this episode, the tax tail wagging the wealth dog, right? So yes, if you're letting taxes make you decide not to go to the doctor, and that could have really bad consequences, then we're thinking way too much about taxes and not enough about life. And maybe that's part of this conversation is, again, it's great to think about tax optimization and it will make your life better, but you can take it too far. And at some point it becomes the thing instead of a helpful tool.
Deb, let's talk about another gotcha, annuities. There have been all these studies done that show that all this money is trapped inside of annuities inside the United States, around the world. But in the United States specifically, I don't know how they're taxed elsewhere, but in the US specifically, it's last in, first out, meaning that any money the annuity makes has to be taxed before the basis gets taxed, which means a lot of people hang on to their annuity money and they never live because they're afraid of the tax. Are annuities just a big tax gotcha, or do we need to just feel free paying the tax?
Yeah, I mean, I think for annuities, I don't use them a lot in portfolios. I think if I do use them, it's really because they already had an existing annuity and it might be too expensive to get out. Or if someone just is super risk averse and they want some security and having that kind of guarantee on what their earnings is going to be, it could be a piece of their portfolio. But from a tax perspective, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's I'm not a huge fan of annuities in general, just with fees and the delayed tax ramifications.
Well, and that's the other piece of annuities, Deb, because I'm with you. I don't think what annuity does is necessarily bad. I just think that an annuity, people, like, how often do you ever see an annuity turned into a pension, which is probably its best feature, that it can be income you don't outlive? You just never see it happen.
Right. Rarely. I mean, typically you're drawing on other assets. If you have, a taxable brokerage account, that's what I always look for first when someone's in that retirement withdrawal stage. And there's always an ordering of priority there. And yeah, annuities are not the first place I go.
It's so frustrating. Another one, Sean, that you'll see one smidgen of Uber nerds really talk about, cash value life insurance. And you see some people online talk about all the magic you can do with cash value life insurance.
Yeah, I've even seen online people say, well, Walt Disney built Disneyland with his cash value life insurance, right? I've seen that. I don't know how true or not it is.
You can build your own fantasy land too using it.
Well, but okay, so if you're in a situation where you're in the 1950s and marginal tax rates are up to 90%, and you happen to be a filmmaker / theme park builder, well, then yes, maybe you should base your tax planning on Walt Disney.
So you're George Lucas.
It's the year 2024.
Wait a minute, Sean. I can see this checkbox. Oh, I matched 2 of the 3. I'm building a theme park, and I'm from the 50s in my brain, but I don't make movies. So
right. So yeah, I think sometimes these things get too cute. They solve for problems that most people don't have. Jack Bogle, he spoke about the incredible opportunity Americans have to own businesses. And I'm not here to say the stock market doesn't have its perils, doesn't have downsides, particularly for older retirees. But boy, isn't it really cool that we have an opportunity to own diversified sets of businesses with very low cost. As an investor, this is the greatest time ever to be alive compared to the past. So I think a lot of these things are solving for problems that folks don't have. And it's sort of foregoing this great opportunity to be an owner of thousands of businesses, which over time tends to, be very valuable for most investors.
Mm-hmm.
Deb?
Yeah, I was just going to chime in on the cash value of life insurance. I had a client I just recently started working with and has quite a bit in the cash value life insurance realm, just in working with her prior advisor. What we were looking at were just, she needs that money for retirement. She needs that for long-term care expenses. She has longevity in her family. So we even recently just exchanged her cash value life insurance policy into a long-term care hybrid policy that can give her some long-term care benefits when she does get older in age and needs to draw on that. We know it's a valuable resource she'll use during her lifetime. She doesn't know that she'll have assets to pass on to her kids, and that's not her main priority. It's really to make sure she still has enough comfort to get through the rest of her life. So even just from a non-tax perspective, just understanding why before you get invested in a particular vehicle, it's really important to ask those hard questions and just understand the underlying premise behind them.
The part of your story that frustrates the heck out of me is that when I was an advisor and I had the 1 out of 100 people that cash value life insurance was a great tax shelter, was a great place for them to be because we'd maxed out everything else and it was beautiful. We could follow the modified endowment contract line. Mm-hmm. I couldn't get them to do it because too many salespeople were selling them to people like your client that didn't need it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because word on the street is that these things suck, and they do for most people. But for that one person
other people,
with
they can be. Exactly. Yeah. It's a case-by-case basis. But if you don't have someone working in your best interest telling you exactly what's suitable for you, it really can be a dangerous and slippery slope.
It's so frustrating. I love this conversation, guys. We will link to Mr. Piper's awesome piece that inspired this conversation on our show notes page at stackingbenjamins.com. Let's find out what each of you guys are doing before we say goodbye. We'll have our guest of honor go last. So, Doc G, what's happening over at the Earn Invest podcast, my friend?
When this episode drops, yesterday it will be my episode with Kelsa Dickey. She is a coach of coaches. So she's a money coach, but she also teaches coaches how to coach. And we really explore this idea of when you become the teacher of teachers, right? So what is it in your life that you're good at that first you get interested in, then eventually you do for a living? And do you ever get to that point where you can actually teach the teachers? And it's a real interesting conversation, as well as we just touch on what you would use a money coach for.
It's funny. I've heard her speak before and she's amazing. And frankly, we need to have her on the show. So before I drop this joke on everybody, I just want to make sure we're clear on that. But they say that if you don't know, those who don't know how to do it, they teach it, right? And then if you don't know how to teach, then do you teach the teacher? Is that the next?
Maybe. I don't know. In medicine, they used to call it see one, do one, teach one.
Yeah, right.
That was always what we did. Is so for a procedure, you see someone do the procedure, you do it yourself, and then you teach one. And so, yeah,
yes.
Hopefully you get good enough at it that you can be a teacher of teachers.
And I dropped that joke, and she's amazing, and we should go listen to her
fantastic.
on Earn and Invest. Let's go ladies first next. Deb, what's coming up on the Beyond Budgets podcast?
Yeah, we just had an episode not that long ago on just basics of investing, and I'm going to take it a little step further and do another solo episode around values-based investing. So for those who have more of a faith-based orientation and they want to express that through their investment choices, that episode is going to be for you.
Does that get harder over time, or how long have you been practicing, Deb?
Oh gosh, I started doing financial advisory work back in 2006, almost 20 years.
Yeah, so looking at 06 versus today, is it harder to do value-based investing or easier, or about the same?
Easier, for sure.
It's actually easier now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot more momentum in the values-based investing world. So especially like on the biblically responsible funds, there's just a lot more entrance into the market. And then from a performance perspective, they're actually very close to their non-faith-based peers. So usually it's within a 1 percentage point return difference.
Oh, yeah, without all the sin stocks in there that, but well, seriously, people talk about, well, those make all the money. So you don't have to go against your values.
Yeah, I've been offering that as like another portfolio option for clients of Worthy Nest, I guess now for 3 years, and it's been really neat.
Awesome. And we'll link to your website at Worthy Nest and to the podcast on our show notes page. Sean, thanks for hanging out with us too again, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
What's happened at the FI Tax Guy?
So this week I'm publishing a post on, it's the fourth quarter, and some folks, especially some early retirees, maybe haven't paid in their income tax estimates for the year. So I've got a post about using an IRA to make up any difference, avoid penalties, that sort of thing, getting those 2024 income taxes paid up.
Dude, you do all the fun topics. And actually, if you need to know, make sure it's at the FI Tax Guy that you go to, and we'll link to Sean's amazing YouTube page. I almost forgot what it was, Sean. YouTube page on our show notes as well at stackingbenjamins.com. All right, Doug, you got it from here, man. Finish this thing out. Lots to learn, but what were our big three today?
Well, Joe, here's what's stacked up on our to-do list for today. First, remember that educational and hilarious thing that Deb Meyer said about the tax stuff? Deb, I'd say it, but I'll never have your comedic timing. So, why don't you just tell us again? Go ahead.
All right. On the tax side, Roth IRA versus traditional IRA, or Roth 401k versus pre-tax 401k. Just understand the difference. Roth, it's going to grow. You're putting after-tax dollars in, grow, grow, grow. It has an amazing potential to even be a legacy vehicle. Whereas pre-tax, you're eventually going to pay the piper.
Pay the piper?
God,
like
so
Mike
good.
Piper?
That was so funny. Oh, God, it was even better the second time. Second, I don't know about you, but I know my life was changed forever when Sean Mullaney brought sexy back to taxes. Give it to us one more time, Sean.
If you're listening to the Stacking Benjamins podcast in 2024 or later, you probably shouldn't use Walt Disney as an avatar for your tax planning. That said, if you happen to be listening to the Stacking Benjamins podcast in the 1950s, you might want to consider using Walt Disney as your tax planning example.
See what I'm talking about? Damn, I could listen to him all day. But the big lesson? Don't question whether I'll get revenge when you beat me at cards. Joe's mom told me upstairs that for Christmas, I should get her something with diamonds. Oh, I think I'm buying her a deck of cards. Ha! She'll never see it coming. Thanks to Doc G for joining us today. You'll find him and his brilliant work at the Earn and Invest podcast. We'll also include links in our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. Thanks to Deb Meyer for hanging out with us today. You'll find her fabulous Beyond Budgets podcast wherever you listen to finer podcasts. And thanks also to Sean Mullaney for joining us today. You'll find him hanging out on his YouTube channel, Fi Tax Guy. Subscribe right now, or smash that subscribe button. Isn't that what all the YouTube bros say? I'm down with it. This show is the property of SB Podcasts, LLC, copyright 2024, and is created by Joe Saul-Sehy. Joe gets help from a few of our neighborhood friends. You'll find out about our awesome team at stackingbenjamins.com, along with the show notes and how you can find us on YouTube and all the usual social media spots. Come say hello. Oh yeah, and before I go, not only should you not take advice from these nerds, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, speak with a real financial advisor. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and we'll see you next time back here at the Stacking Benjamin Show.
You know, it's funny. We performed this live on YouTube, and I totally forgot that Aaron in the audience had a question. So here's Aaron's question. By the way, if you want to join us, today we're on a Tuesday. Usually we're on Wednesday afternoons about 3 p.m. Central. So do the math at wherever you are, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Okay, 2 p.m. Mountain. We'll do all of them. Aaron asks this, guys, if you have a small business, is it better to have an S Corp versus a sole proprietor? I've heard the S Corp allows you to pay yourself as an employee. Does that really help with taxes? Let's go. If you guys don't mind, let's go right to the Fi Tax Guy. What do you think, Sean?
All right. So I tend to think S corporations are oversold in the world. The main planning concept is something we talked about earlier in the podcast, payroll taxes. If you're working sole proprietorship, there's a form on your tax return every year, Schedule C. Here's the revenue from the business. Here's the expense from the business. And then you get to a net profit line. Well, that net profit is then subject to self-employment tax. And people don't like that because, hey, it's another tax you got to pay. And so let's say your net profit was $100,000. Well, by my quick and dirty math, a little over $14,000 of self-employment tax. Well, what could we do to reduce that self-employment tax? Well, we could have our business in a legal entity, usually an LLC, but could be another one. And we make an S corporation election. Now what we do is we say, well, we had $100,000 of profit. We'll W-2 payroll ourselves like we're a regular employee. Maybe it's $50,000, maybe it's $60,000, maybe it's $40,000. It has to be some reasonable compensation. That's a whole other podcast episode, so let's not go down that rabbit hole. But the cool thing about that is if our reasonable compensation is only $50,000, now we're only paying payroll tax on the $50,000, not the full $100,000. So it's a way to reduce payroll tax. We say, well, why doesn't everybody just do that? Well, you've created a new tax return. You got to do W-2 payroll. There are services that do that for you, but it's still, an administrative task. And you've reduced stuff like a solo 401k contribution or a SEP IRA contribution. I think for a lot of people, the benefits of an S Corp may not be worth the squeeze, may not be worth the administrative tasks and the hassles that come with it, but it's absolutely a valid planning option. I do think it tends to be a little overhyped. Deb, I'm curious your thoughts on it.
I'm hoping Deb fights with you, Sean. Come on, Deb, bring it. Fight with them.
I think it's important to evaluate what stage of the business you're in. So for a lot of startups, they think, oh yeah, S Corp, I'm going to save on taxes. And that's not always the answer. As Sean pointed out, you really do have to have a solid base of not only income, but profit. So after the expenses are paid, you still need to have a decent amount of earnings coming your way. For a lot of people, getting an LLC set up is a great first step because that is a legal entity that from a liability perspective, it kind of separates you as an individual from the business. which is under that LLC umbrella. And then if you set it up individually, you could be taxed as a sole proprietorship early on. And then maybe as you're building the business, you're starting to have more recurring revenue, you have more of a predictable profit, then you could consult with a CPA. I always recommend consulting with a CPA before doing an S election. I had a client not that long ago that set up her own LLC, did an S election, and by the time we talked about it, her business wasn't going to be profitable. She only had expenses, no income. And I was like, no, you need to rescind that immediately. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice. I am a CPA and I do help clients with some of those conversations. But depending on where you're at in that business journey, it's important to think about going through those financials with your CPA before making that big decision.
Doc, that was one of the most hilarious after shows we ever had.
It was so funny. I couldn't help myself.
Oh my God.